They're calling for change, justice, and early elections.
We are seeking a democratic solution to a situation that is already out of hand.
This is our second Independence Day.
The opposition dubbed it the mother of all marches after 3 weeks of countrywide demonstrations against Venezuela's ruling party. President Nicolas Maduro staged a competing rally in the capital, Caracas.
Pretendieron asaltar el poder y los hemos derrotado otra vez a los golpistas, a la derecha corrupta intervencionista.
As anti-government protests grew, the police and armed vigilantes stepped in. 2 young protesters were shot dead, and hundreds of others were injured. But the opposition and the government blame each other for the violence. Protests began in March when Venezuela's High Court stripped the opposition-controlled parliament of its powers. The decision was quickly reversed, but it was followed by a ban on opposition leader Enrique Capriles from holding office for the next 15 years.
En las últimas horas han dejado correr esa intención, Diego, de pretender llevarme a la cárcel. Con eso creo que no van a lograr frenar el proceso de cambio que anda buscando el país, más bien creo que van a acelerarlo.
Polls suggest most Venezuelans do want change. Food and medicine shortages and soaring crime have fueled a sense of desperation, eroding support for the socialist revolution of late President Hugo Chavez. But efforts so far to engage the opposing fronts and peace talks have failed. The opposition are now focusing their calls on demanding general elections be brought forward from late 2018. On Wednesday, Maduro told supporters he's ready to go to the polls.
Y quiero que el pueblo se prepare para ganarla en paz y con votos. Yo quiero que nos preparemos para tener una victoria electoral pronta.
With more protests planned, there's fear of more violence, as the military and thousands of civilian militia pledged to defend the government at all costs. But the demonstrators say they'll stay on the streets, confident that momentum is on their side. Sandra Gatman, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now from Caracas is Maria Corina Machado. She's the leader of the opposition party, Vente Venezuela. Ma'am, thank you very much for joining us. Massive protests that we're witnessing in Venezuela. We're seeing the pictures of the streets filled with people who are calling for President Maduro to go, people angry at the government. I was looking at Telesur. They're saying, and they're showing pictures, that pro-government protests are just as big as yours. Is that true?
Well, absolutely not. And I would like to let you know that it's almost no private media today in Venezuela also telling the truth. Fortunately, there is international media that is letting the world know what's truly happening in Venezuela. We yesterday leave probably the biggest demonstration ever in our history. It was millions of people throughout our country peacefully protesting and demanding for a peaceful and democratic transition and to stop the brutal repression that we've seen in the last hours taking place throughout our country.
Is this just about one man, or is it about a system?
It is about the regime, in fact. It is about a regime that has been in place for almost 20 years, that has lived through the highest and longest oil boom in our history, but has brought hunger, violence, and misery to Venezuela. Today, over 80% of our population live in poverty, and you can see young children around our country starving in the garbage, looking in the garbage to get some food. So it is obvious, finally, for the international community that this regime is not only a dictatorship that violates massively and systematically human rights, that tortures political prisoners, that shoot body to body to young men and students in the streets, that, as I said, has censored the media, the independent media, but that has decided to move ahead with repression, radicalization of their procedures, and that once again has decided to keep on advancing in its with its links to international crime, narco traffic, and all other mafia networks. As I say, finally, we see the international community calling things by their name. We've seen the European Union, the Organization of American States, as well as Latin American governments warning Nicolas Maduro in terms of that repression will no longer be overlooked by the international community.
And when they speak up, ma'am, he uses that as evidence that you and others in the opposition are colluding with international actors to try and get rid of him in a coup, not democratically, not on the streets, not among the Venezuelan people, but you're trying to get rid of him in a coup d'etat sponsored by the West and sponsored by international actors. Is any of that true?
Absolutely not, and, but it is not only original. That's what they have said for all these years, and certainly a coup d'etat has taken place in Venezuela, and it was done by the Maduro regime when, by using the Supreme Court, which is loyal to the regime, to the dictatorship, they decided to take away all power of the National Assembly that was elected in 2015, which is the only power that has independence, or political power that has institution that has independence and autonomy and legitimacy in our country. They decided through rulings of the Supreme Court to ignore, to take away all attributions of the National Assembly, and starting from that moment on, that took place 3 weeks ago, finally, the world has understand what we've said. This is a coup d'etat from within the regime, and it's time to move ahead and stand on the side of the Venezuelan people, which peacefully in the streets, as we did yesterday and as we will be again today, are only demanding for a transition to democracy, to stop the humanitarian crisis, and to bring back peace and reconciliation of our whole nation.
Is there any way you can do it the other way around? You mentioned the economy is a mess. People are starving. I mean, people are literally tearing each other apart for food in many parts of Venezuela. Is there any chance you can work with the government as a top priority to try and stem the humanitarian crisis, and then leave a political transition to after that?
It is important to understand that this crisis was intentionally produced by Maduro and his regime. Venezuela has turned into a mafia state. This regime has denied the international support, the humanitarian support that has been offered even by the church. They have denied the fact that there is a humanitarian crisis underway in Venezuela. And on the contrary, they had decided to move ahead in repression and blocking, isolating our country from the international community. Venezuela is facing today a critical, a decisive moment in which a totalitarian regime pretends to impose with the force, with the power of the arms, silence in our country. And on the other hand, you have a nation united, millions of people peacefully, but they have already decided to advance in order to move ahead and conquer freedom and democracy for people. And it's a decision that has already been made, and we will not stop until we are able to bring back, as I say, democracy and freedom and prosperity to our people.
Maria Corina Machado, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us.